Well, thank you, Jordan and Mark, for those updates. It's lots of awesome stuff happening this time, as always. Um, so we had some changes to October's release. And the note is on the agenda. I don't know if Mark wants to talk about
Sure.
it. Yeah.
Basically, we just had a scheduling conflict for October 11th, and we want to make sure we have enough people around to support the release after it's out. So we're just going to push back a week to the 18th, just to make sure that we have enough developers and stuff around to watch it after release. So
Yeah, we don't like being abandoned right after a release, so we very much appreciate that. So yeah, the change is already on the calendar. So if you have like downloaded a copy, just make sure that you have the most up to date. I think it notes that it was updated on the calendar itself. Next thing, we want to remind everyone to please complete the survey on the timing for AspenCon. And I am putting a link to the survey in the chat. We also posted a link in the Aspen Slack channel. So whether you get the link from here or there, that's fine, but we would so appreciate your feedback. And this is, even if you can't come or don't think you could come this year, just let us know. And or next year, I guess, is when it would be. But yeah, let us know like what kind of timing works better for you so we can get a feel for that. Anyone else on the, oh yeah.
I just jump in. Maybe I'm having a stupid moment because I do have those, but you said it changes from October 11th to the 18th. That's a Tuesday, and we normally do these on Friday. I'm sorry, on Thursday.
Sorry, just the release to production. So we'll still have the gathering on. Yep.
Okay.
The gathering won't change. We're just going to push the.
I was being stupid.
The actual, no, it's a great question. So yeah, we're just pushing the actual release out a little bit. So there'll be a little extra time in there. So.
Yeah. Any other questions? Oh, excuse me. Any other questions about the change to the release day? Any questions about AspenCon or the AspenCon survey? Okay. Well, yay, AspenCon. I just love that we can say that now and that it's going to be a thing. Let's see. I'm going to let Jordan make the next announcement about a meeting to talk about LEDA notifications.
Yes, thanks, Morgan. As you saw, we're starting to work on the notifications for LEDA, and we're starting with safe searches because that's the kind of a great way to make sure that it's working correctly and that we don't want to do something that would impact a lot of patrons all at once. But we do want to know how you would like LEDA notifications to work. What do you think should be an app notification? Even if you're not using LEDA that much, if you're using a different app, it would be great to come to this to talk to us about what works for your patrons now that you have, what doesn't work, what do you wish that it did? So it's really building out a plan for notifications moving forward. Now that we know how they work, we're going to go ahead and see how else it makes sense to use them, thinking about what's notified, how often, maybe even what time of day. So that's the meeting. We planned it for 2 weeks from today at the exact same time. Thinking if people had regular meetings scheduled, this is likely to be a time that would be open for more people. So yeah, please come. There's a link to the meeting there, and we will put more notifications in Slack as well in advance of the meeting. And that's it. Any questions about that meeting before we move on? Okay, hope to see you there. Thanks.
Cool. And before we move on to our discussions for today, I wanted us to all give a big Aspen welcome to Miranda Fuentes. She is our newest team member. She is taking Cody's place as the Aspen support and QA analyst. So yay, Miranda, welcome.
Thank you.
Yeah. We are so excited for her to be on the team and that our team is growing because we could just keep doing more stuff for everybody. All right. So this is like the Jordan show today. So I'm going to turn it over her to talk about priority planning and review.
Thanks, Morgan. Okay, let's get this deck up. Oh, of course, all the little zoomy things get right in front of the slideshow screen. There we go. Okay, so normally this part of the Aspen gathering is when we talk about just the release review, what we did, what we didn't do, what our plans are for the next time, and just kind of review how the month went. So as always, on the left, you have the plan that we presented last month, and on the right, you have what we actually got done this month. So as Mark said, we got the Evolve implementation done, which is fantastic. As always, we'll have like little cleanup things whenever we do a new ILS, but overall, we believe the functionality is there, and that is wonderful. And we are implementing an Evolve library. Second is the notifications and LEDA. We've talked about that quite a bit already. That is going to be ongoing, starting with saved searches, as we talked about, and then there will be more. And then our main focus really starting a month or two ago, and it will be a little bit longer, are those partner priorities. So if you're not setting your priorities in Aspen, please go ahead and do that. We are looking at those, as well as some things that need to be done for libraries that are coming onto Aspen, and the high priority bugs that anyone is submitting. So we're still in the midst of making sure that we get those cleaned up. A lot of times I like to say, make sure you set your priorities to the 2 and 3s are really helpful for identifying patterns and things that people want to see improvements to. And sometimes even if it's not your top priority, maybe your 3rd priority will get done because it's related to something else. And I'm talking about this because the last thing on the list is a bonus thing that we got, the support binge pass titles for Hoopla. It was something that was on our radar a while back. We didn't really prioritize it because it doesn't impact that many titles in Hoopla. But we had a Hoopla bug come up, and then in fixing that bug, it just made sense to go ahead and implement what we needed for those binge pass titles in Hoopla. So then that got done. So that's kind of our little bonus for this month. So looking at what's coming for the next release, on the left is what was on the right in the previous screen. So what we did last month, and then we have our plan for this month. Continuing the partner priorities and high priority bugs. Like I said, we're trying to knock as many of those out as we can. We're going to continue working on those save search notifications. So what you saw this month is just the groundwork. It's making sure that Aspen and the APIs can support what we need for those notifications. And then we'll be actually working on the notifications this month. And then we have a little bit of a stretch goal. We have ACI Worldwide as an e-commerce platform that we need to integrate with for a partner. So I wanted to make sure I brought it up here just in case someone else is using ACI Worldwide and wants to be a part of that testing. Remember, a few months ago, we had all of the e-commerce and we kept saying e-commerce part 1, e-commerce part 1. This is a little bit of that e-commerce part 2. So that is the plan. Before we move on to our next discussion topic, are there any comments, questions, thoughts on the plan? I'm checking the chat and I don't see anything. If you do have any questions, we're going to keep rolling on, but you can go ahead and put them in the chat or ask in a minute, and we can go back to that. So the first discussion topic, this is one at the very end we didn't have time to cover last time, and it was like, ooh, we'll put out a survey really fast. And I realized I'm like, it's a little bit easier to explain what's happening here. And then we'll go ahead and poll in this meeting with what we want to do, rather than try to send out a survey and have there be confusion. And it just was getting a little bit complicated to explain. So we're going to explain it here. So what you're seeing right now is what you are all familiar with, the way information is displayed for the various editions of a grouped work. We have 2 different new designs that we want to evaluate, but what was really prompting this is it's not very responsive. If you can see right now, some of the shelf location right here is hiding behind the buttons. So we needed to make this a little bit more readable, especially on narrower screens. So we have 2 different solutions for this. One takes these labels at the top over here and puts them across the left-hand side. So publication date right here is now published, and then edition. And we have all of that here. And we've consolidated a little bit too, like publication date and publisher are kind of merged together. We're also trying to make this a little bit smaller, condense it a little bit. So this is the new design. We're calling this one with labels, and we'll have one without labels as well. This is what it looks like on a cell phone. So you can see the old design, not great. You had to do kind of the scrolly back and forth thing. Now it's all easily within the frame of the phone. And we do still have the labels across the top up here. The labels are now at the top. So published, edition, physical description. So this is with labels. And then next we have without labels or no labels. So again, labels are up here at the top on the old one. On the new one, the idea here is that patrons don't really need labels. It's pretty obvious what this information is. Or that's the hypothesis. We're asking you which we think. So everything is consolidated here. You can see First American edition, the date, the publisher, and then any of the physical description information, but without a label, with the understanding that the patron just kind of gets it, like you would see in the front of a book. And then what that looks like on the cell phone. So again, the information is up here at the top without the labels right there. Okay, so side by side, so these are the two. Morgan's going to launch a poll in a minute. These are the two that we're deciding between, with labels over here on the left, or with no labels with the information altogether. And then the cell view of the same thing, with labels and then with the information together. So I'll go back to the, wrong way. Go back to the previous screen, and then Morgan, do you want to go ahead and launch the poll, and everybody here can go ahead and vote on which we like better.
Oh, it is launched.
Okay. And there is an option to keep it the way it is now.
Oh, I like seeing the numbers go up. We got 20 out of 28. We can do it. I'm sure there's some people who are like actually doing other library work, because that's library life. Also, if you have any comments or questions about this, please put them in the chat too, or just unmute yourself.
I shall do exactly that. So something I was thinking, and I don't want to skew anybody's vote, but I preferred without labels, but I still think there should be a crutch for people that aren't as familiar with catalogs and library information. What if when you hovered over like First American edition, it told you what that label is? Or you hovered over where it says 1996 or whatever it says, publication date appears. So just a suggestion.
Thanks, Chanel. That would work on a screen. It wouldn't work on a phone. So we'd have to come up with another solution there.
That's true.
We got some comments in the chat. Desiree says patrons care about where to find the item. Making the shelf location more readable, prominent is better. Lauren at Click says, I think it makes sense for patrons. It's just so easy for me to see the way it is now because I can tell right away if I need to do merges. Aaron agrees with Desiree. Catherine says less busy, so easier to find what they really care about. Tara says no labels, I think makes the pub date easier to see, which I know is what folks are scanning for. These are really good comments, everybody.
And we have bolded that pub date here as well.
Yeah, I'm not sure how final these are. I think I would even, because I like the no labels too. This is Scott from Swan, by the way, I'm sorry. That pub date might even be better off being the first thing. I mean, before the edition. So it's always in the same place instead of sometimes first and sometimes second. Just a thought. But yeah, no labels for me as well.
All right, last call for the two people who haven't participated. Maybe I'm one of them. I don't know if I count. I don't think I do. We are like literally split in half. Oh my gosh. Well, that tracks. Split in half.
So do we want to have, I heard a number of people speaking up for the no labels. Does anyone want to speak up for the labels?
I'm totally willing to put my foot in it. I mean, I just think that without labels, it looks a little scattered and kind of unfinished. There's just this information there. I mean, and honestly, you know, if you go to a phone screen, both look really cramped and overloaded regardless. So that's just my 2 cents. This could be librarian pearl clutching. Maybe we should destroy all the labels.
I agree that there is a lot of information there, and we've talked about wanting to redesign this because it's just a lot of words, right? And nobody reads this many words. This is just I don't want to call it a band-aid, but an intermediary fix before we can kind of redesign, rethink how much information needs to be there and how that information should all be on the screen or shouldn't be.
Yeah, there's definitely room to pull some stuff. I mean, 2 dates is sort of unclear. I know there's a C by one of them, but you know, what does that really mean to a patron? Some of that physical description stuff is really not going to make any choice decisions. So yeah, I definitely think paring that down. And that's why I liked the no labels. So it was all about just that interface breathing.
I would maybe pipe in about, I think sometimes there's important things around like DVDs and media that are in the physical description. I can't remember exactly, but that would be something to just kind of keep an eye out for too.
Yeah, I just mean it's a conversation to have, really. Not that definitely we should cut everything.
Yeah, and in turn for academics, probably those bits of metadata are more important than say for a public library.
Also true.
So this is Rachel from WVLS. We had a discussion with our interface committee about this, and we were split down the middle as well. And I think I prefer the no label look, but what people were arguing was that, like, if we are going to put that information there, is it realistic that every library user has an idea of what these words mean? Like, edition is abbreviated in many cases, and so you have, in the comparison on the screen, you've got First American Ed, you know, and without a label, what does that mean? Honestly, I don't know if any of that is that important to a user. And in this case, this is Harry Potter, isn't it? So in this case, there is like that Mina Lima edition, where that one, the edition is important, or that illustrated edition of Harry Potter. So like we might need edition statements, and so to have them unlabeled and just say Ed might not work for a patron, right? So that was where those in that committee, that when we discussed this, that wanted labels, they swayed many of us because they were arguing that, like, just because we can look at this and you know, interpret what these no label things mean doesn't mean everybody can. And so trying to put ourselves in the place of a patron, we felt the labels helped a little.
That comment makes a lot of sense. It is hard to take off your librarian brain, and you know, you can't unknow that you know what ED means.
This is Keisha at Arlington Public Library. It's the conversation of when you have people who are not necessarily, you know, people with English is not their first language. So their association with the catalog, they might be able to read it, but doesn't mean that they know what catalog information goes where. And so you give them a label and say, oh, this is what that means and what significance that is to some degree, especially when you have, like, if the information, I'm not saying that the information is going into Google, but again, if it gets put somewhere else, that label helps for people to know what you're talking about.
And to your point, the label is translatable. So you can say what it is in their language.
Oh yeah, no, I'm just yeah, that's true too.
Yeah,
But
yeah,
also it's like,
exactly.
you know, like sometimes I'm not the best of Spanish readers, but when I'm trying to read something in Spanish, if it has a label, I might know what that is. And I'll be like, oh, they're talking about this more so than even the information within. Like I could skip it. Like I was like, oh, this is what that is. Okay, I don't need that.
So we have 2 more comments in the chat. Buyu, from a patron's perspective, they may not necessarily understand the information given without the additional context. And then Jonathan, pro labels here. If you are specifically looking for a pub date or illustrated edition, labels help to find that info when scanning. Mark, I hate to ask this. Aspen is full of toggles.
We need a toggle here for sure.
You
It's
think?
50-50. Yeah. It'd be
Okay.
easy to do. So
Okay.
they'll go in the
So-
group work display settings.
Okay, great. Our plan was to have this available with this release. Mark, is that still going to be possible with the toggle?
Yeah.
Okay, great. So this is already coded. It was just a matter of which we wanted to turn on. So we will add a toggle and everyone can go back to their libraries and have their conversations and you can have your choice. So that works. Okay. On to the, oh yeah.
Oh, Erin has a question really quick. She says, is it possible to turn off or on these tags or all of these bits of info if we wanted to show edition but not pub date, for example? That should be controllable in the grouped work display settings, correct? Or is that just everything that shows up above the formats?
So currently it's showing selected pieces of information, but only if they vary. So if everything's got the same pub date, it wouldn't show that necessarily. So right now we're not configuring it. The idea with the logic of what is shown there is if we have 2 or 3 different editions, we want to give people enough information to make a decision as to which one they might want. So is it a first edition or not a first edition or that kind of thing?
That makes sense. I think I was just thinking, like, it sounds like there's a big difference between libraries about what they think is important for their patrons.
Right.
Maybe if we could turn off the physical description or whatever
Right.
pieces we didn't think they would use.
Yeah, and it varies in, I think it was Tara who was saying, or somebody who was saying it depends a lot on the format too. So like for Blu-rays and DVDs, the physical description can be really important where it's not as much for the books. So, and we don't want to configure that, I don't think, by format to say, show me the physical description for movies, but not for books and that kind of thing. So.
Desiree asks, can the show editions button change to a different label when it's already open?
Yeah, I think we can do that.
Yeah.
Just need to look into what colored we'd want to make it. So.
Anything else on this one? Okay. Well, that was fun. I did not expect a 50-50 split. Like it's when it's hard for us to make a decision, sometimes that makes sense. Okay. The next thing is this new badge, the feature that just kind of happened that we were kind of a bonus feature almost for part of the notifications for saved searches. Is there anything else we want to use this for? A few things. If you notice that this new flag looks a little bit different, it's because we care a lot about accessibility. And as we were designing it, we really, really like this design, but this design is not accessible. So we changed the colors. One of the things we've talked about doing with this is making it configurable with colors, so you wouldn't have to have the yellow. But is there anything else we want to do with this flag? Right now, it does not work for on order because on order just works a little bit differently. Things could end up being showing as new for a very, very, very long time before they hit your catalog. So that was one thing we thought about. Does anyone have any thoughts on whether or not it should work for on order, should not work for on order?
This is Tara at Swan, and I would say I don't have an answer, but it does definitely a lot of, I know our on order titles will hang around forever for a really long time. So that might be, yeah, that may be something that's kind of frustrating more than helpful.
Is it crazy to suggest that we label the on order things as on order somehow?
No, not crazy at all. We talked about that as well on our
Oh.
side. We could do a different flag for on order.
Mhm.
I mean, we could also do a different notice for on order, because that seems like one of the primary use cases is you have the patrons that they want to know as soon as the new books come in on order so they can get their place in the hold line. But then maybe they sit there for 6 months while we wait for the book.
I'm trying to grasp, so we have, The Adventures of Huckleberry Finn. One library, all their copies are trash, so they purchase a new copy. So this has always caused us issues. I mean, you're placing this new at the group level, so there could be 100 copies of Huck Finn that have been on the shelves for years, and this one copy is new, so it gets marked new.
That's not actually how the new is going to work. It's going
Okay,
to look
good.
at the grouped work. Yeah. And look at, it's only, Mark, explain, let me make sure that I get this right. Correct me if I'm wrong, is
Yeah.
what I'm saying. Only if the first title in the grouped work was added in the last week. Is that
What do you
Yeah,
mean by
so-
first title?
the first item?
Yeah, so if you own, so it's looking for the oldest, it is basing the date based off the oldest copy on the work. So
Oh,
if you have bought the Overdrive, if you buy Overdrive 6 months ago and it shows up, then it's 6 months ago. If you buy the book today and add it, then it's still 6 months ago. So it's looking for the oldest copy. If you buy a copy today, and then, or if you have bought a copy a month ago, and then you buy a second copy, it is still tagged as being owned a month ago. So
okay,
should
great,
not
thanks.
have too many new things. If you do see a lot of extra new things, let us know, and we can certainly look at that logic, but it's using the added in the last facet and filtering according to what's new in the last week.
Is that across different formats as well?
Mm-hmm. So yeah, so if you have the audiobook and the book, it's based off when you bought the first copy.
Okay.
And the idea being, yeah, people are going to follow subjects or authors or that kind of thing. So they don't necessarily need to know when you bought the book versus the audiobook. At least yet, is our hope.
So what I'm kind of thinking about here is, so the catalog says it's on order. If it's a popular title, it's going to have holds,
Mhm.
and then it becomes new. And then it gets a flag that becomes new. I think for popular titles, that is a scenario that would happen at my
Yeah.
library, right? It would be on order for, actually, I don't think we don't have a problem with things being on order for a very long time. I don't think that's been a problem, but I should talk to my collection development people. But if it's a popular title, it's going to have a bunch of holds, and then it's going to be marked new. I think that might be a problem, or it could be. I'm thinking through this in real time. So the other question that I had was, the new flag will look the same whether it's new to the library or just new to your saved search, correct?
It is, if it would be both, because it's only new to your saved search if it's new to the library.
Okay, so
Does that
like-
make sense?
Yes. So if we turned both of those features on, right, or the one that feels like it's going to be on by default, maybe, which is good, but so you wouldn't necessarily know, is it new to one of my searchers, or is it just new? If you were doing, if you had both turned on.
Correct.
Okay.
But you would know whether or not you're looking at one of your saved searches or not, if that makes sense.
Yes.
Okay.
So the other bullet point 5, other ideas and thoughts. So the thing that's kind of been rippling back to the surface here is, and maybe this is already featured, I've just forgotten, but I want to see the books that I've read in my search history in search results. And it feels like we're getting closer to this.
Yes,
Am I off
that's a good idea. We hadn't thought of, or I hadn't thought of it in that way, but in terms of giving patrons like sort of like personalized context when going through results, that's a really great idea that goes along with this. Yeah. Anyone else have comments on that idea? And just to reiterate, it's putting a flag on something similar to the new flag that indicates to a patron that they've already checked something out.
And we do show, so in the results, if you've read something before, it will show that if you've logged in and that kind of thing. So yeah, showing a flag for, I don't know what you would call it because it's not Reddit, but if it's a movie or something.
We can figure that out. There's got to be something.
It's a cool idea. Yeah.
Yeah. We're getting a bunch of love that idea, good ideas in chat.
Previously borrowed.
Yes. So I'm hearing more like, let's not worry about on order for now. Is what Aaron says in the chat. Is that kind of the general consensus? Let's just, anyone want to argue for like, yes, we need on order right away?
I will order.
I mean, that was definitely my initial thought is like, well, I mean, I'm just trying to think, I could be, super patrons might be the squeaky wheel that are getting the grease in this case, right? But the patrons that I know that really love the library, they're scouring Aspen and they're sorting by date ordered. I mean, they're sorting by date purchased, and on order are the first items.
Yeah.
So I think just like in the example today, in your test catalog, you're going to sort by date purchase, and there's going to be a bunch of on order titles, and then the new titles start after that. That seems strange to me. But that's, again, this is just my initial thoughts about this, right? I'm speaking and thinking at the same time.
I'm at the same place you are, just by the way. It's like niggling at my brain, but I'm not passionate about it. But I agree with you.
I think earlier when when I thought that when I turned that flag on that said always show in the search results, the problem was I sorted by date added, and I had a whole bunch of on order stuff and I didn't realize it at the time. So I was looking for the new flag and it wasn't there because they were all on order. So I like the coming soon. I could also see people wanting to not place holds on those if they're not available yet. So, or at least not be disappointed that they don't get it. And it'd only be if all copies were on order. So
coming soon has been problematic for us because sometimes it can be 6 months for these things, and then people start in, but they're like, but it says coming soon, it's still not here.
Eventually.
Yes.
And everything is translatable, so you can put what works for your community. So let's put the on order aside for now, because the decision we make today doesn't have to be the decision forever. That's totally fine. The feature that Mark showed off at the very end, which is like it applies to all the searches, that was one that we didn't think we were going to get done. So should it apply in search results? I guess we're going to have that feature, so you have that option now. And should it apply, and Mark, with that feature as you were building it, it would also show in all browse categories, correct?
We might want to make a separate checkbox for that because I could see people wanting to highlight them in browse categories, but not search results, or vice versa potentially. So
right.
Definitely if you've got a lot of it, I could see potentially wanting it per browse category. If you have a new fiction where everything is new, it might be kind of redundant, but
We did check the design on that though. I looked at, because this actually comes from Half Price Books. I was looking around just to see like what other people had done to do this kind of thing. And they did have some categories where all of them were new, and it's obviously redundant, but it also doesn't look bad with this design. So that was something we took into consideration. So for those here, should maybe browse categories be a separate toggle? And I don't know, should it be per browse category?
I don't think I don't think it needs to be per browse category. Where I do see the issue is the browse category of the new items is that they won't all have a new flag, right? Because some of them will be on order.
It would
So
depend
if-
on how you set it up. Yeah. The browse
So
category.
if they all were new titles, I think it's fine having that badge on all of them. It just makes it more exciting and reinforces this is, you know, we are continuing to bring in new stuff into our libraries. It's just if you click on something that says new fiction and then get a screen that has some things marked new and some things not marked new, then you feel like something's broken.
That makes sense. Just like we saw today when there were so many on order.
I know that we have a stale browse categories problem, and this would only exacerbate that problem. So I don't necessarily know if I would want that label turned on immediately, but that again, that's our problem. So the stale browse category problem is something that we need to address. But I wouldn't, you know, again, like my first thought would be like, I wouldn't probably turn that on for my browse categories immediately.
Okay. The last kind of question we have on here, should the amount of time be configurable? We put a lot of thought into this, and actually the initial thought was in the last month. And the more we looked at it and the more we looked at how catalogs changed and the more we thought about how frequently patrons might want to receive a notification, or how if they would be upset if something had been in the catalog for like 2 weeks and hadn't received a notification. We did think a lot about that it should be a week. But I still wanted to ask here whether or not anyone else had thoughts on that amount of time.
I think it should be configurable because depending on the size of your library or library system, you know, if you've got a ton of stuff coming in throughout, you probably want it to cycle through pretty rapidly. So you don't end up with a screen that everything's new just because so much stuff is getting purchased. On the flip side, if you're a tiny library that has very little budget, you probably want that new to stick around longer because you rarely get new things.
I could also expect some of our members to want that flag to sort of align with their shelving. And if they have things in a new section for 3 months, maybe at least as long as it's roughly close, that might be nice for them.
My assumption though is this would this be at the like a grouped yeah, what level would this be at? Like would it be configurable per library? Because that seems like
yeah.
a lot. And I know within our consortium, you know, we have libraries that maybe only have they only buy new things, like very rarely. They might just have, so for them, something new might be 3 months old or 6 months old. But for other libraries, they're doing a lot more purchasing.
Right.
So I don't know. I think that actually the configurable to like turn it off or on, if it's like working for folks, might be the answer.
Getting lots
Yeah.
of support for configurable in the chat. And Mark, would this be at the library system level?
Like at the grouped
Yeah, it
work
it could
setting
be in the
level.
grouped work display, which could then be
Okay.
applied to each
Okay.
individual library.
We at Swan started going down this path of talking to libraries because there was at least some initial thinking that we could automatically have collections move from the new category to then when they're just regular old stuff. And it became apparent right away when you start talking to some of these libraries, what is new for them is not so much as publication date is they just acquired it and they only have X amount of linear shelf space. So I could see this being a can of worms somewhat. If the attempt is to align it to what the library considers new.
And I think the goal is it's more patron facing. It's I read Miles Morales comics. I want to know when you get a new one, less when is it on the shelf? Because in this case, these are all hoopla and that kind of thing. So some of it's how often do I use the library? If I use the library every week, then I want it per week. If I use it less frequently, I may want it less frequently.
And there's a difference between the flags and the notifications too, and they don't have to be the same. Okay, we are getting close to time. If you have any other thoughts or want to continue the conversation, you can always do that in Slack. We'll take feedback any way you provided to us. Next on the agenda is open time, and we do have one thing there. I'm going to hand it over to Elise to talk about upcoming conferences.
Oh, look at that. Hey, everybody. So yeah, August has been, it's a little quiet for us conference wise, but we are back in full swing for September. So first up, we have Koha Con, which we are super excited about. I know this is an Aspen meeting, but Koha Con's amazing. It's the International Koha Conference. And this year it will be in the US. It will be hosted by Koha US in Lawrence, Kansas. So I'm going to go ahead and share a link to the registration in the chat because registration is closing at the end of August. The deadline for proposals has already passed, but there is still time to register. And they just put super cool merch up on their site. They have t-shirts, so they're really cute too. Wyoming at the end of the month. So we have two conferences, of course, happening at the very same time. So September 28th through 30th, we're in Wyoming. And we are also in Ohio at the Ohio Library Council. So if any of you will be at any of those conferences, let us know. We'd love to see you. If you feel like doing a little demo at the booth or anything, hit us up. We look forward to seeing you. There's a lot more in October too, but we'll save that for next month. There's a lot in October.
So thanks, Elise. Well, we have 2 minutes left for open time. Does anyone have any last thoughts or comments or questions?
I have a question.
Yeah.
Is there a way to find out what the high priority bugs are that you're working on, or which of the library priorities you're working on? Is there a list somewhere that we could look at, or?
There is not a public list yet. We're working on a way to be able to share bugs publicly. Right now, everything that we have is in tickets, and they typically contain patron data or login data. But something that we do have on our roadmap that we want to do soon is to be able to show that in, we're thinking in Aspen, the same way your tickets are pulled into Aspen right now. So if you had a ticket on a bug, you would be able to see what kind of broader community bug it was attached to. We don't plan 100% a month in advance for exactly which bugs we'll work on, just because we don't know what will come up. Or maybe one person has reported a bug and then all of a sudden in a week, 3 more people report it. And maybe that one is kind of towards the bottom and then it gets bumped up. So we leave it a little bit more flexible there. But once we can kind of share that information, I'd like to do that. I'd like for everybody to kind of be able to see those. And then you would also have us be able to check and see if something that you're seeing is a known issue. So that's something we definitely want to do.
That would be helpful. Thank you.
Yeah.
Anything else? All right. Well, you all know where to find us. Hit us up on Slack or submit a ticket if you have, you wake up in a cold sweat in this tomorrow night and like, oh gosh, I have a thought about this, just let us know. We look forward to hearing from you, and we will see you again next time. Thanks, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.